Our next step is to erase this shoelace that's hanging down and repair the sole of the shoe. If you notice in our original, that shoelace is going to get in the way of our window here, and we need to make sure it doesn't look like there's a lace hanging over. To do that, you're going to use the clone stamp tool. Now the clone stamp tool takes a little bit of patience, and you are going to need to go back and forth a little bit. The tool is right over here. It looks like an actual rubber stamp. It's underneath your brush tool. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to zoom in to get nice and close. What the clone stamp tool does is it samples from other areas of your picture. Sometimes you can have a nice large brush, other times you're going to need a fairly small brush. The first thing that we're going to do is fix the sole right here. In this area, I think we can do a pretty large brush, so I'm going to go ahead and make my brush pretty big. Then, to sample your picture, you hold down the Alt key. Once that happens, you get the little crosshair icon. I'm going to click because that is where I'm going to sample my picture from. And all that means is I'm going to copy that part of the picture. If you can see, it's now holding on to the sole of the boot. So I'm going to bring it over here, and you want to make sure and line it up, and I'm going to click a couple times, and it started to cover that up. Well, I'm going to make my my brush a little bit smaller. Alt again to sample. Come right over here, and I'm just going to click a couple times. Now I want to get this little indentation for the sole. So again, I'm going to Alt and come right over here. And so now we have a fixed sole. You're going to continue to do that all the way up. So I'm going to come right here and sample the area that I want to replace, and just keep resampling to save over. Up here where we get into the actual leather, I would suggest a much smaller brush. We're just going to keep clicking here, and every now and then just take a step back and see if it looks too obvious that you have completely copied another part. If it does, you can go back in and sample another area and just change up the pattern just a little bit. So go ahead and keep going up. This is going to take you quite a while to do, but go ahead and follow the shoelace up until you come to this eyelet, and this eyelet should look like there is nothing left there. I have went ahead and erased our shoelace. Now if you notice, this little area kind of bothers me a little bit, so what I'm going to do is come up to my opacity and bring that down and just go resample and try to make my colors a little bit less obvious where I've clone stamped, so it doesn't look like there's a shadow there. So right now all I'm doing is blending, and by taking the opacity down, you're just making the clone stamp a little less obvious than what it was. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it's good enough, and we'll start putting some other stuff in there, so it'll be pretty obvious that, or it won't be obvious at all, that there was a shoelace there. Now put a layer mask on the top of the boot, so go right down here to layer mask. Get a fuzzy round brush and make it a little bit see-through, and mask off the top of this boot right there. Next we'll do our levels right here with the scales, or down at the bottom with the half black, half white for levels. Either one will work. Your values for this will be 9, 0.95, 244. Remember to do your clipping mask, so I'm going to hit Alt and go in between the two layers and click. So that only applies to my boot. And I'm going to go to my adjustment layer again and go to my color balance. Go to my shadows, and my shadows are -11, 1, -9. Our midtones are 16, 11, and 16, and the highlights are -5, 6, and 2. Now remember again, to do your clipping mask, hold down Alt, and you get these 2 little circles, and click. Next, we're going to create a shadow underneath the boot. So you're going to come down here to the bottom, and you're going to get a new layer. And if it's not already underneath the boot, you're going to click and drag it underneath. Then you're going to go to your paintbrush over here, or press B, and you are going to select a fuzzy edged brush that again is kind of see-through. You want it to be smaller. That looks about right. And then you are going to build a shadow underneath the boot. Now that I have my shadow, I'm going to double click right here over here on layer 4, and I'm going to call this shadow bottom of boot. Now I'm going to create another new layer, and this one is going to go all the way on top of the boot, and we are going to put a shadow on top of the boot now. So same thing, fuzzy black brush. Oops, I'm going to make it quite a bit more see-through. Let's go down to 20% and come right here, and you're just doing the same thing on top of the boot this time. Back and forth a couple times. Now I'm going to come right over here to where it says layer 4. I'm going to double click on the words and do shadow and top of boot. Next, you'll find the door in your resource files. Mine are in this folder, and here's my door, and I'm going to click and drag it into my document. Make it quite a bit smaller. So my door is going to go right here in the arch of the boot. And then hit enter to place it, and go ahead and Control+ to zoom in. Now we need to cut out our door, so I'm going to go right over here, right click and rasterize the layer, and this has square edges, so the easiest thing to use will be your polygonal lasso right over here. So we'll pick our lasso, and if it's not on the polygonal, you can click and hold down to select that one. And now I'm going to start at the bottom and just click at each of the corners until we get back to the beginning, and you'll see that little circle come up, and you click and you'll have what I call marching lines. And then inside of those marching lines, you'll right click, layer via cut, and over here on your layers, you'll see we have layer 4 and the door. Our layer 4 is the door, and the door background, the door is just the background. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to rename layer 4 door. Oops. Okay, so to make our door fit, we want our door to fit right here and fit underneath this arch. So I'm going to bring it right here, and I'm going to bring it down a little bit to make it smaller. But now that angle doesn't fit with the curve of the boot. If you hold down your control button and click this corner, you can distort that edge and make it fit that curve. So all I did was hold down control, and then I moved this to make it look like it fits that curve a little bit better. And then I'm going to bring this bottom and move these up just a little bit more. And then when you're done, you hit enter. Next, I'm ready for my adjustment layers. So I'm going to come right down here to the half black, half white circle. And I'm ready for my levels. So I'll click on levels. And those are 23.93 and 241. Don't forget, do your clipping mask. So Alt and clip, so that's only over the door. And then next are our color balance. So I'm going to come back to my circle and get my color balance. And my shadows are -32, -6, and 5. Midtones, -30, -9, 12. Highlights, -32, -6. Oops, wrong ones. I'm reading the wrong thing. Our highlights are -56, -29, and -11. Sorry about that. So now we have our color balance, and again, we hold down Alt and clip so that only happens to the door. To make the door look like it fits in with the boot, we are going to apply a shadow. So I'm going to go to my new layer, name this shadow over door, get my paintbrush again, make it smaller, and I'm going to basically draw over the edge of the door to help blend those edges. And I just keep clicking until the edges kind of go away. And there we go. Now we're ready for our bell next to our door. So I'm going to open up my resource files and get my bell. Click and drag it over. Oop, it's huge. So I'm going to shift and make it smaller. Remember, we do shift so that we don't distort the picture. And your bell is going to be super small. Oops. Control plus to zoom in. And once we hit enter, our bell should get a little bit clearer, but we're just super zoomed in. We're at 300%, so it'll clear up here in a second. So I need to cut out the background. I'm going to go right over here and right click and rasterize. And then for this one, I think I'm going to try my magic wand. So fourth one down, and I'm going to go to my magic wand and click. And it doesn't look like it's going to work that well. So I'm going to do Control D. And I might just go old-fashioned and try my eraser and see how fast that works. Oops, it's see-through. So I just take my edge right along the edge of the bell and erase that background. There's lots of different ways to do it. Sometimes I just like erasing best. It's nice and simple. Make eraser a little bit smaller. And just get all the blue out of there. And then go back to your move tool, and it's going to go right here, and it's actually going to be even a little bit smaller. If I can zoom back out. There, I have my little doorbell. It might still look a little bit big, so you could even make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to do just a little bit of a shadow around the bell to make it look like it fits just a little bit better. Not very much, not as much as the door, I'm just getting these edges a little bit darker. Double click on layer 4 and do shadow, or I'll just do bell shadow. There we go. Now we're ready for the roof. So I'm going to go to my resource files and click and drag the roof over. So roof for shoe project, click and drag. And this one we're going to make bigger. And hit enter. And again, you need to cut it out. We only want this. So I'm going to start with my polygonal lasso. So right over here. And follow all the straight lines. Just click at each corner. And I'm not getting all of the grass off, but that's okay because we're going to blend this, so that'll end up being erased later. Okay, and I make it all the way around to where I get my circle. Oh, look, I forgot to rasterize it. So before I right click, I'm going to come over here and do right click and rasterize, and then right click and layer via cut. So here layer 4 is my roof, and this is the background. I'm going to press delete to get rid of that. Double click on layer 4 and name it roof. And take it to the top of my boot. Now we need to make the roof fit the boot. So make sure that you don't have any of the see-through area of the boot showing. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And then you can use your control to make the roof match just a little bit better, but it really fits pretty well already. And then you can go to your layer mask right down here, add a layer mask, and you're just going to mask off a teeny bit along the edge. Bring my opacity back up. So just a little bit so you don't have that straight edge along the bottom. You'll be putting a shadow over it here in a second, so we'll get rid of more of that. We just don't want any edges right now. Okay, so there we've kind of faded that. Now we're going to go down to our new layer. And we are already on our paintbrush, and it's already black, so now we're going to add a little bit of a shadow, just clicking, and that should take the edge of that away. And then I'm going to double click and do roof shadow. So we have our shadow. Now we're ready for our adjustments layers. We're going to start with our levels, so go down here to your adjustment layer and go to levels, and those are 22.81, 247. Remember your clipping mask, so Alt and clip, so it's just on the roof. Back to our adjustments, and now we're on color balance, and our shadows are 12, -6, -8, midtones, -25, 6, and -1. And I did those backwards. Darn it. Okay, shadows are 12, -6, 8, midtones, -25, 6, and 1. Highlights are 12, 2, and -2. It's a lot of numbers. Okay, and hit your Alt to do your clipping mask. And there are your adjustment layers for the roof. Now we're ready for our wooden beams. So I'm going to go to my source files and click and drag my beams file over and hit enter. Now I'll take my polygonal lasso and I will just pick one of the beams. And remember, your circle means you can click, right click, layer via cut. Over here on your layers, layer 4 is your beam that you want. So click on beams and delete and rename this to beam. Now your beams are going to be holding the roof up. So you're going to kind of manipulate them around. And so we can have one right here that's going to go backwards a little bit. And it's going to need shortened up quite a bit. And just keep rotating it however you need it. Let's go some more. There we go. And I'm just going to delete some of it because it's still a little bit too long. So there's that one. Now I'm going to, over in my layers, I'm going to pick my beam, right click and duplicate that layer. And now this one, oops, wrong layer. Come on, beam. There we go. And I'm going to click this transform control right here. And I'm just going to flip it and bring it out here to the edge. Now I'm going to take my beams and I'm going to put them underneath the roof. Then I'm going to take these 2 layers and I'm going to right click and merge layers so there's only one beam. Now I'll do a quick mask, a layer mask. So I'll click right here, get my black brush, and I'm going to do a pretty small one. And add, oops. So with our quick mask, or with our layer mask, we are just going to fade those ends into the bottom of the boot so they look like they belong. Now we're ready for our shadow. So we'll go down here for a new layer and add a shadow on top of the beams. I'm going to erase this a little bit. There's really no right or wrong here. Just do it until you think it looks okay. Oops, that's definitely not okay. There we go. And always use your fuzzy edge brushes whenever you're doing stuff. So there we have our shadows. Now we need a beam to go right here on our roof. So I'm going to get my resource files and bring my beam back over. Enter, right click, rasterize, and use the polygonal lasso again. Right click, layer via cut, delete my beams layer, and this one is going to go up here. And it needs to be on top of the roof. So there's that. And then I'm going to take my eraser and erase the part that I don't need. And bring this down. Okay, and another shadow layer right here to make that beam blend in to the boot and to the roof. Now I'm going to go back and rename all my layers. This one is my roof beam, so I'm going to name that roof beam. And this is the shadow for that, so roof, beam, shadow.